Hey everybody, I'm Laura DiCarlo of Career Directors International. If you're starting, currently thinking about starting, or actively building a resume writing or career coaching business, I am so glad you have joined me today. In this show, we share tools, strategies, and mindset tips that lead to your ultimate success without the stress. My guest today is Grant Cooper of Strategic Resumes, Career Coaching, and Business Plans. Hey Grant, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, glad to be here.
I'm so excited to have Grant with me. I've known Grant for over 20 years now, probably more like 25 years. But anyway, you're going to get to know Grant and learn about his tips and story here shortly. So we're currently streaming on CDI's Facebook page, YouTube channel, and LinkedIn page. But listen, the platforms are a little bit hinky in terms of telling me who you are. So when you go to comment, please be sure to include your name with any comments. That way, we're going to always know who we're talking to during the show. And hey, if you don't know me yet, my goal is to become your not so secret superpower. At Career Directors International, we provide everything you need to love and excel at what you do so you can make a difference while earning an exceptional living as a career industry professional. So let me put up my caption here, cover our names for a second. But again, we're talking today about startup and growth secrets with my special guest, Grant Cooper. Excuse me. So you're all in for a treat today. As I shared in the session description, Grant has achieved a lot of success many entrepreneurs aspire to, such as landing nationwide corporate contracts as a resume writer and creating products that have been used in resume writing by the US military, universities, and companies. So there's some great advice coming. So just hang in there with me, because first I want to ask you to do three things before we dig into Grant's interview. One, let me know in the chat, and I'm going to move over to the chat right now. If you're here with us today, say hello. And again, give us your name. You can give me a hashtag newbie if you are completely new to my channel, or just be part of the CDI Fly High Tribers and just say hello with your name. Second, if you have questions, be sure to put them in the chat. We're going to be monitoring that the entire time, and this is your weekly opportunity to ask me questions related to growth, right, and startup, but also your one chance to ask Grant, as he is our willing victim here today. All right, I see Hal Flanzer saying hello, and I see Joan B. Saying hi, Laura and Grant. Welcome, both of you. Thank you for joining us. So third, we don't want you to miss out on an episode, so be sure to like, follow, and or subscribe, depending on what platform you are on, so you don't miss an event every week, Wednesday at 3:45 p.m. Eastern. So again, we're continuing our journey into startup and success secrets for growth for self-employed resume writers and career coaches. And now it's time to spotlight my amazing guest, Grant Cooper of Strategic Resumes, Career Coaching, and Business Plans. So I'm just going to take that little announcement off of the screen so you can see our names. Like, you're going to forget who we are at this point, right? But let me tell you a little bit about Grant. So let's see here. So Grant Cooper is president of, you can probably fill it in for me now because I keep saying it, because, you know, that's power of memory. Say it lots of times so you don't forget it. Strategic Resumes, Career Coaching, and Business Plans. Founded in 1994. He is a certified advanced resume writer, career coach, and LinkedIn profile writer. Martin Yate, author of the #1 best-selling Knock 'em Dead resume book series, stated, quote, "In 25 years, Grant Cooper is one of less than 60 people I have quoted in my entire body of work." I remember when Martin came to one of our CDI conferences, and I felt impressed to have him there. So that is definitely a big kudo, Grant. Grant was also honored by Laura DiCarlo of Career Directors International with the 2015 President's Award. He has authored 250 plus columns and articles and been selected as a seminar presenter at national conferences. He authored a groundbreaking software program, Resume Critique Writer, used by universities, military, career offices, recruiters, and resume firms worldwide. For more than a decade, Grant has been a judge for CDI's National Tory Resume Writing Competition. He's a graduate of Louisiana State University. Grant's clients land competitive positions at Fortune 500 firms and attract offers. And I want to just say a couple other details because I just think they're pretty impressive, and I kind of teased you with them in the write-up of this session. Some of Grant's claims to fame are pitched and landed a highly lucrative contract with Kinko's. You all might remember Kinko's, to offer private label resume services in 350 plus US locations until FedEx bought them out and ended all partnerships under $10 million. He also won a contract with Louisiana Department of Labor to train staff in offices statewide. We told you about his resume critique program, but I also love, because being a solopreneur or an entrepreneur or self-employed, and even if you have a team, it's a big deal to say, people say they're successful and sometimes they're working themselves to death and barely getting by. But when Grant can tell us that he put 3 kids, a scientist, sales director, and a doctor, through college, grad school, and med school during 30 years of self-employed experience, I have to say, bravo. You are hitting all those milestones that so many of us want to achieve, right? So it's not all creating products, landing contracts, doing things that aren't all based on this client, these hours. It's trading hours for dollars for hours. So I hope you're as excited as I evidently am, right? If anybody else has joined us and you want to say hello to Grant and welcome him as our guest today, please drop that in the chat. Again, give me your name so I know who we're talking to. So, all right, Grant, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right. So you've already answered my first question. You started your business in 1994. So we're going to move on from there. Tell us a little bit about your business. I know you're not just exclusively career services, and you have a unique, another unique angle as well. So,
yeah. In addition to the resume writing and career coaching, I also I have these executive clients that would come to me and they'd say, "Grant, you wrote my resume back in the day. I'm leaving, my company. They gave me a big severance package, and I'm thinking of starting a business or a consulting service. Could you possibly write a business plan for me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could do that," because I was actually, before I got into the career services industry, in my regular career of entrepreneurialism and working for corporations, I would write things like business plans, marketing plans, and things like that. So I knew I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've written hundreds of them for clients, and they get funding, whether it's from the a Small Business Development Commission, from SBA, from banks, from investors. And it's been a lot of fun doing that because it's just a side business.
Right. But effective in that it seems like your clients tend to naturally often end up needing that. Like when somebody writes LinkedIn profiles just for job seekers, and one day a company comes and knocks on the door and says, "Hey, we need to boost our profiles because we're going for contracts or whatnot, or our resumes," and suddenly you're like taking corporate jobs. I love opportunities like that. But you've also had, as we were discussing, and I could be getting ahead of myself, so we will pay the price for that later. You've had some really neat opportunities with the different, contracts that you've had. Would you say, are those things that you pursued yourself, or were you lucky enough to have them come knocking on your door?
Well, that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, I was at a job fair that I, was lucky enough to get them to give me a little booth, and I didn't pay for it. I just said, "Look, I'll do resume critiques for people."
Right.
At the Superdome, where the Saints play. And all of a sudden this delegation came up, and it was the governor of our state and some of his executives. And they stopped at my booth and they said, "This is wonderful." And so I ended up, they kind of detailed me to the Department of Labor, and they just basically gave me a contract to go around the state and train their different employment offices and train the folks in there. So that was a great thing. Just by being there, that fell in my lap. And then when I first started, there was this thing back in the day. Now, a lot of the young people will not remember what this is, but it's called the Yellow Pages, right? And so I would get calls from people. I had an ad on there right after restaurants comes resumes, you know, and they would call me up, and some people would say, I went to Kinko's because they do type up resumes. They didn't write them,
Right.
but they do the typesetting or whatever. But I need someone who actually does the writing part of it, not just the making it look pretty. I need the words and all. And so that's why I'm calling you. And I thought about that and I said, what about all the people who went to Kinko's in my city or even elsewhere? And they wanted that service that Kinko's didn't provide. What if Kinko's would just refer them directly to me, and I'll give Kinko's a cut of every order? So I made an appointment with the regional director, but he canceled on me 4 or 5 times. His office manager would call and say, Grant, I'm so sorry. John is training people in another facility. John can't do it, then whatever. Finally, the last time he canceled, she told me that he was training at a nearby facility. And I just thought, what the heck? I put my phones on hold, whatever. I went to that facility. I shook his hand and I said, John, I know you're too busy. I just need 5 minutes of your time. And he listened and he loved it.
Yes.
He loved the idea of me doing private label resumes. We started out doing them for 7 locations in New Orleans. Then we ended up doing 15 locations in the general area. Eventually, I got up to 350 locations. I was really set. I mean, it was great. I was making great money. I had 25 writers working for me. I had one person who did nothing but proofread every order before it went out. And we were kind of like the Wendy's of resumes. We were not like, the fantastic like what we do now, what you do. But we were not also like McDonald's. We were good. We were pretty good. And then, this company called FedEx came in and bought them. And no matter what I tried to do, they're good people, but
no. Well, my husband worked there for 27 years. I have my own opinion, but
yeah, they didn't want to fool with it, and I understood. So
yeah,
it was a good run while it lasted.
It's a good run. Exactly. So I hope hearing that gets you excited, because I know you could do the glasses half full. I'm talking to my audience right now. You could think of that from the glasses half full of, oh yeah, he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But please don't let that be your takeaway. Job fairs. I know so many people, like we used to have a job fair service where we would give members free booths. We had a relationship with a couple of organizations nationwide, and they would get like $700 booths for free to be able to do critiques. And even though we have lessons in CDI telling you exactly how, and I'll share one, it's a members only document, but if you're a CDI Association member, I'm going to share that in the replay resources. But because for me, job fairs were like the most amazing event to book my calendar for a week. But there had to be somewhat systemized, the same way as like I talk about consultations. Like you got to have a system, otherwise you're just going to stand there, and more often than not, they're going to be like, oh no, I think that person wants money, I'm not going to go near them. But putting yourself out there is so powerful. We don't get seen. We often don't get found. And then when he talked about, the yellow pages, well, today it's obviously a lot bigger and more convoluted, but it's Google or whatever. And if you're strategic, you're also looking at partnerships and niching with associations where you can go to their career centers and say, hey, I specialize in this. Would you like some articles? Would you like a webinar? Getting in front of the right people. And that whole, I was like, if I could have had like confetti to throw up, Grant, when you were saying, I found out where he was and I went there, that's me. That's a bootstrapping entrepreneur right there who's like, you know what? Squeaky wheel gets the grease. And you went. And what was the result of him possibly inconveniencing himself to spend the day at a job fair, a day he didn't have work, inconveniencing himself to drive to somebody who blew him off 5 times, 350 location contract. That's what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur. You got some grit and some drive. I love it. I love it, Grant. Thank you for telling us those stories of the how, because I think a lot of times everybody wants to complicate it and make it feel like you just got to do like all this. I mean, I know funnels and things are important, but at the end of the day, they're not often how career industry businesses grow. All right, Janine says, I think he demonstrated that sometimes you have to make your own opportunities by thinking beyond the surface stuff. Yes, yes. Good point, Janine, because it really comes down to you can just be head down in your business doing the same thing every day, and maybe you'll get lucky and somebody will call. Or you have to look for those serendipitous opportunities. Like, I'm getting these calls a lot. I wonder if I should, do such and such. Or I talked to somebody today, a private client, and we were talking about getting corporate clients. And I'm like, somebody comes to you who's been laid off. I'm like, ask them, has your company provided you with any funds for these services? And if they say, well, no, they haven't offered that, you say, are you willing to give me the HR person's name? I'll be glad to reach out to them on your behalf. There's your contact to possibly create an opportunity within a company. You just never know. All right, super excited. I got goosebumps. If you have any great stories, audience, viewers, please drop them in the chat. I'd love to hear any neat aha moments you've had. And now I'll let us move on. So you started talking a little bit about what you did before you started, your career industry business, Grant. I think it's so valuable for people who are thinking about starting a business in this industry to understand that we come from all different arenas. So tell us a little bit more about your pre-experience.
Well, I once went to a cocktail party with my wife, and it was a very professional, very upscale kind of party. And there was a guy who, my wife was director of a nonprofit, and it was somewhat university based too. And this guy was a neuroscientist, a neurologist, MD, and med school professor. And he came up to me with his drink in his hand, and he's talking to me. Oh, you're Chris's, husband. Oh, fantastic, And he said, so tell me about yourself. And I told him a few things I had done in the past. And, when I heard this, I realized it wasn't exactly a compliment. He said, you have a very checkered past. But I mean, he was nice about it. He was laughing, but it is true. And I think that's some of why I'm pretty good at this thing of resume writing, because I've had different experiences. I've worked for the federal government for 8 years in a management capacity. I was a division manager for a home improvement corporation that had offices in 30 states. I was an entrepreneur. When I went to college, I opened a restaurant a half a block from LSU campus. And I also opened a natural food store in a very nice commercial area of Baton Rouge. It was the first natural food store in Baton Rouge. And I also had a buddy who opened a weird kind of little business, and he wanted to know, if I would help him with it, which I did. And it was so successful that I ended up joining him. And for years, we franchised businesses, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, even Indiana.
Oh,
so
wow.
we did all that, and it was wonderful. And if you ask me real nice, Laura, I'll tell you what kind of business it was, because it was kind of wacky.
I saw, when I was reading, your claims to fame, and that, because everybody, I get them to answer a bunch of questions beforehand so I can, plan and know. And I was like, I don't see what it was franchised. Now I'm super curious. So yes, I'm asking very nicely, and I know the
Okay.
audience is too.
I say that because when people hear it, they might go like, "Wow, he's a wild and crazy guy." There was this thing toward the end of the '70s that was a fad for a while.
Okay.
Like you looked at like a sitcom on TV, they might have show this or whatever, and it was called singing telegrams.
Yep.
Okay. So I had a buddy and he worked for the biggest national singing telegram firm called Eastern Onion Singing Telegrams, which is a play on the word Western Union.
Okay. Okay.
So he wanted to start his own. So he came up to Baton Rouge, where at the time I was in law school, and I helped him. I did all his intellectual property, got him organized as a subchapter S corporation. That was before we had LLCs, which are way easier. And I even wrote a bunch of the songs for him because I liked writing, wrote his job descriptions, helped him design the uniforms. We did all. It was way more successful beyond our wildest dreams. We got on the 6 o'clock news with the governor of Louisiana on TV, which his staff ordered for us to sing to the governor for his birthday. We did all these corporations, all kind, and it just blossomed. Then we just started expanding. We expanded as far as Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando in Florida, Indianapolis, Indiana. I went up there and opened a new one there. We opened Birmingham, Alabama, which is a beautiful town. That's one of my favorite places, Birmingham. Opened one there. And of course, all around the Gulf Coast and Louisiana and Alabama and stuff. So it was wonderful. It was a great run. I did that. And eventually after that, I ended up working for the federal government. So yeah, I've had a little bit of a checkered past.
I wouldn't say. I see. I don't understand when people have the audacity to say something like that, because I don't think it's checkered. I think it's rich. I think it's interesting. I think it's impressive that you reinvented yourself so many times. As you were talking, I was like, gosh, I'd love to hear what he had to say. He was like, so what other jobs have you had? And I'd be like, well, I used to commercially raise butterflies. I mean,
Wow.
we all have done, not all of us have done different things, but, I think it just makes me interesting. And I think as resume writers and career coaches, I used to always joke with my clients when I was talking about the thoroughness of the interview I was going to do of them. I would always say, it's going to be the first time anybody ever asked you, so tell me about yourself. Like they often do at cocktail parties, but I really am going to pick because I want to know. I really want to know. And then I would say, and that pretty much describes me. I'm like, I know enough about everything to be interesting at cocktail parties and very dangerous in real life, because I can't do any of the things I write about, but I can certainly talk about them, unless of course it's classified. And then we have to shoot me, right? Okay. Sorry, everybody. I'm just in this like very upbeat mood today. I'm super excited because I've known Grant, like I said, for like 25 years, and I've never heard these stories. It's so neat. And every week getting to meet with somebody, it's like old home time and opportunity for you to meet these wonderful, amazing people. Janine says,
Laurel, I know I'm interrupting, but I've got something that I think is very important to say, and that is this. One of my greatest experiences as a professional, as a member of CDI, okay, you pay your dues to the organization, you learn continuing education and all these things. But I never realized what a benefit, and I didn't write this on any materials before, but I'm just telling you now because it's so wonderful. There was this thing that happened, I don't know if you know, but I'm in New Orleans. I was born here, and this is where my business is. And there was this thing that happened in 2005 called Hurricane Katrina. And when that happened, I lost all my business. I mean, my customer base was evacuated, and it wasn't a 2 or 3 day evacuation. People were gone from New Orleans for like half a year before trickling back in. I mean, homes were destroyed, everything. I was out and I had no income at that time. I mean, I don't have the business interruption insurance that some people might have, like, oh, something happens and they'll pay you. And I don't even know if that would be affordable. Well, this wonderful thing occurred. There was a member of CDI who got in touch with me, so, quite a few of them actually, and offered to help me while, because I still had my phone forwarded to a cell phone and I could hear, I could get my calls. And they said, look, you're a fellow member of CDI. We've got extra work and we'll give you. And I had my little credit card thing that I could do still with me. I plugged it into the hotel room and I could do this. And also there was a member who was in Macon, Georgia at the time. And she actually asked me to go up there. She gave me a place to stay and I got paid to be. So it's just, that's another benefit of being involved with a group of professionals, is that if something bad happens to you, they can rally and they can be a support structure and help you. It got me through, so I just want to interrupt and say that.
No, I'm so grateful. I have tears in my eyes because it's the community I've wanted it to be, and it is true, and it is true today that we've built something special here with people who are willing to help each other and support each other. Janine can attest to that, not because she's had a crisis, but because she just met amazing people who all worked collaboratively together on a project recently. And that's all you could hope for and more, right? That people would be there for you when life happens. So thank you. That reinvigorates my desire to keep running CDI. Just kidding. All right, Janine says, Grant, I think that, and she's talking about your diversity of jobs, I think it makes you even more valuable for the clients you serve today. And I would absolutely agree. And then someone says, that's what I call seriously diverse work experience, which is how the best career coaches are made. You're truly an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. I don't know who that is. I can only see Facebook users. So if you want to give me your name so I know who we're talking to, please do. And Janine says, it is definitely a community. Yes. All right, listen, before I ask Grant another question, if you have like any unusual or cool jobs in your background, why don't you let us know in the chat? I would love to know. I gave you mine, my weirdest commercial butterfly breeder hobby that turned into a job. But anyway, okay, so let's move on. So let me see here. Where are we at? 1 second. So you had all these great experiences. How did you come about deciding to start what I assume probably started as a resume writing business?
Right.
In the day?
Well, back when I was working for the federal government, at that particular time, I was divorced and I was a single dad, joint custody and all that. And by the way, I met my current wife 30 years ago. We've been together since 1994. So that's when I came back. So I was on the West Coast and I wanted to return to New Orleans, which I did, and I was going to open a business. So I was doing due diligence and I had an idea for a business and I was researching it and everything. I was talking with a shopping center that was out at the river. That's kind of an upscale shopping center. And then I was at church on Sunday, and there was this woman that I had known a long time from my college days. And she told me that she owned a resume company and that she wanted to sell it. And she moved to Portland, Oregon to become a holistic health practitioner, which she did. And so I thought about that and I was thinking, wow, resume company. I mean, I knew there was such a thing as career services because in my previous divorce, it was ordered that I had to pay for career services for my ex, which I happily did. And I can tell you that I'm not one of those bitter. I knew my responsibilities and I was happy to do them, and pay, but it was very expensive. And it had career coaching for my ex. It had resume writing. job search help and all this stuff, and it was not cheap. So I knew, there's some money in this, you know.
Yeah.
So I shadowed her at work, this woman who had this business she wanted to sell, and it was called Career Pro, which was, there had been a number of career pros all over the
Right.
country. And so I shadowed her and I fell in love with it. I said, wow, I get to help people. I can do this. I like doing this. It's fun and you make money.
Yeah.
Her business was not very strong, so I didn't have to make a very expensive offer. Although I met her and her husband at a coffee shop where I gave them my proposal of how much I would offer, and they immediately accepted and signed. So I must have offered too much. No, I offered a good. I like win-win anyway.
Yeah.
You know, in any kind of transaction, if I'm getting the best deal and the other person is getting a horrible deal, I don't like that. You know, it's why some of my clients, I'm not cheap, but the way I look at it, they should want to pay me. They should want to pay me a good amount, because I've seen a lot of other resume people that went out of business. And if you're a customer and your resume writer goes out of business and you need to be updated, you have to start over with somebody else. They're not going to give you any big discount because you're a previous customer. You're not. You're a new customer for them.
Yeah.
So I've been in business a long time and my customers really appreciate it. They can come back to me and they don't have to pay like a brand new resume. They have to pay an update fee, which
Right.
is different. So anyway.
I get it. I'm still referring clients, and I haven't, the last people I helped with ghostwriters was in 2009, and I still get people coming back looking, and I find them somebody, of course, because that's.
And by the way, when I bought the business, believe it or not, she was a wonderful resume writer. I mean, her work was really impeccable. She was very good. She had a master's degree in, I think, drama and undergraduate degree in English. She was really a good writer. But I saw some things that I could improve. Just as one example, now we're talking 1994. She didn't use a computer.
Yeah.
She used a kind of a big typewriter looking thing that was called a word processor, and it had enough memory that it could store like a paragraph here or a paragraph there. And then when people wanted to change or update their resume, she would use actual scissors and cut and paste on, and then use the little glue and then Xerox it on and white out certain things. I was like, oh, no, 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 no. There's these things called personal computers. I'm buying one, and that's what I'm going to use.
Yep.
So
I
made
remember
a lot of improvements, and the business went from there up to there.
I remember whiteout tape. That was a beautiful gift in the early days.
Right.
And I also remember when I first had my practice and the yellow pages, that one of my competitors' ads said, typewriter only, smokers welcome. That was what I was competing against in my local market. I was like, typewriters only. I mean, we already had Microsoft Word at that point, But oh gosh, I love it. Thanks for
I started out with WordPerfect, which actually had a higher market share than Microsoft Word in the very earlier days. But then it became obvious after a year or two, Microsoft Word was just dominating.
Yeah, what was it? What was the one before it?
WordPerfect.
WordPerfect. I used WordPerfect too. That's correct. You're right. I forgot all about that.
And it was really good. Actually, at the very beginning, Microsoft Word was not as good as WordPerfect.
Yeah, I did love WordPerfect in the beginning as well. I barely even remember it now, but things have changed a lot. Like I also used to absolutely adore Microsoft Publisher for my design resumes in the 90s, the ones with the graphic enhancements, and I could move things into Word, but you couldn't create that stuff in Word. You had to do it in Publisher and move it over. Super neat. Yeah, you got to have you got to invest and I mean today the entire Microsoft Office suite is $99 a year with constant updates. It's nothing like what it used to cost us uh,
Right.
to have that software and update yourself. Here's a tip I want to pass on really quickly. I don't see it a lot, but if you're still on an old version of Microsoft Word, you're hurting yourself. You know, I know on computers it does automatic adjustment, but guess what I just recently discovered on my iPhone? I got my first Word document, my phone couldn't open it. And so I had to Google. I thought maybe it was my phone, and I sent myself Word documents. I looked at former ones other clients had sent, and it was my form. Somebody sent me back my form filled out. Couldn't open it, and it turned out older versions not compatible to be viewed on a phone. You don't want to have a job seeker, and this was a resume writer. You do not want to have a job seeker, you know, having your resume that you created in an old version that now a recruiter can't look at it when they're on the go on their phone. So spend that $99 a year. All right, we have a couple comments in the chat. That was Hal that said, you know, seriously, that serious diverse work experience makes the best career coaches. Janine says, yes, LOL, I had one of those word processors. I used to do the church bulletins using that and cut and paste and copy process. I used a lot of the whiteout tape and copy and paste stuff in the beginning. And probably Hal again says, I loved WordPerfect. Lawyers loved it. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So guests today, if anybody wants to tell us about how you got started, let us know in the chat. Otherwise, Grant, at what point in your business did you find CDI?
Well, there was, as you well know, there was this predecessor organization, PRWRA, Professional Resume Writers and Research Association, that this woman had. And I had just finished the Kinko's contract, and I had a choice. I could go out of business and just go work in the corporate world or whatever, which I almost did, by the way. And I'm so glad I didn't, because you know how that works. You get laid off every 4 or 5 years, whatever. And somehow or another, this woman got in touch with me. And so
Well, you were both in
you should
Louisiana.
come to this conference, and I think it was in Atlanta or something.
Yeah, it was.
So I went, and then I found out there was a whole different part of the resume world than what I knew. I was doing like a fast food version, and here was this fancy, like professional, and and you can like get certified, and people will pay you more money. And I was like, wow, because in most business there's two ways to make money: volume or quality, and you have to combine them. But I was doing it on volume before, but now I couldn't do that because I didn't have this big gigantic contract.
Right.
So I started going to these conferences, and people like you, Laura, were there, and I was like, wow, there's a whole community of people. I mean, didn't even know about all these other people. I had heard of some other place, and I kind of called them one time to see about that, and they just didn't sound too professional to me, so I just wrote it off. But then this one was good, and then eventually, Laura, you took it over, and I was very happy that you did. The other person was wonderful. She's great. I still keep in touch with her on Facebook to this day. But Laura, the thing about you is that aside from all the stuff about you really do care about people and all, you're a certified card carrying workaholic. You are. And when you say something, you do it, and you take care of details. And it was just a wonderful thing that I could belong to this association, and they just had all these activities and follow up, and it just made all the difference in the world. So
yay. For anybody who doesn't know, I joined at the same time. For me, the draw was resume writing award competition and I didn't have to go anywhere to do it. It was, like just submit your resumes. I loved that because I had formerly, my very first conference ever in the industry, I had won a first place resume writing award. And then I love those competitive opportunities. So I was like, wait, we have awards. And also I was jaded by some experiences I had in the industry. So I jumped in and have never looked back. And yeah, I was at that Atlanta conference too. Yeah, good times. Um, okay. Now I feel nostalgic. All right, back on track. If anybody else has anything interesting to share around this topic, please drop it in the chat. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, in terms of CDI today, Grant, I appreciate when people point out to me that I don't like to call myself a workaholic, but I definitely like to feel that I am responsive, and that CDI can be a chameleon whenever possible. Like I had somebody come to me a couple months ago. They sent me an email and they're like, "Is there anything newer on LinkedIn on CDI?" And I went and I looked and I'm like, "Nope, but we will." And we actually have, and you guys are the first people to hear it. Some of it you've already heard, but we have in April, we have Brenda Bernstein talking about LinkedIn profiles in a live member included event. In May, I'm talking about LinkedIn business pages and why you want to have one. In June, this is what's new. We have Donna Shannon signed up to talk about job search, LinkedIn job search tips your clients need to know or job seekers need to know. These are member included sessions. And I'm meeting with the education committee tomorrow to look at the first drafts of brand new done for you white label job seeker tip sheets on LinkedIn profiles and LinkedIn for using LinkedIn for job search. So it was like within 2 months, it's like, oh, look at that. Somehow that we missed that in our peripheral vision. So yeah, I try to stay on top of it. I can. Sometimes we need a little nudge, but I want everybody to have a place where you can find what you need. All right, Janine says, yes, I agree, Grant. Laura gets things done for us. I still wonder when she actually sleeps. People, I do more relaxing than I do working. I'm just special. And I think Hal probably is the one that just said, thank you for these sessions. Hal, thank you. All right, so you've told us you told us, Grant, the story, your experience with Hurricane Katrina and how, the people of CDI came through for you, which I just warms my heart so much. And you talked about the responsiveness and workaholicness of having resources at your fingertips. Is there anything else you'd want to point out that you found particularly valuable about about CDI and the success you've been able to achieve from being a member?
Yeah, well, one of the things is this. When clients engage with me or reach out to me, okay, either by email or by calling on the phone or whatever, I let them know, I'm a member of a professional association, I'm certified and so forth. And it's a distinguishment, and you need to do that. So right there, I mean, I can't imagine if I didn't belong to CDI, if I wasn't certified, what am I going to say? Like, hey, I'm really good,
Yeah.
I mean, it's important, and you have to use that, and it's the same thing. Like right now, right over here, right there, is a project I'm working on for a woman who is a chief medical officer of one of the largest hospitals in our community here. And she is a member of professional associations. She is board certified, and it has to go on everything she does. You walk in her office, it's on the wall,
Yeah.
and on my wall, I just walk right out there. This is where I do the writing. But a lot of folks in the resume writing world work from home, and that's great for them. I'd say maybe even the majority. But I have an actual office, and out there is my lobby. I've got a library for people to peruse through. It's very nice and modern. But I also, on the wall is my CDI membership and my certification, and people see that when they come in. So that's a big plus right there. In addition to that, there's continuing education. Um, I'll be honest with you, if the certification was eternal, like I just got it and that's it, I might get lazy. And now as it is, every couple of years, I've got to recertify. I've got to study some things. I've got to pull together stuff I've done, document it, and it's a pain, but it's a necessary pain. And if you get down to it, accountants, CPAs, doctors, healthcare people, all kinds of other people, even construction and building people, scientific people, all professional walks of life have that.
Yeah.
You get certified and do continuing education to keep up your certification. And it's important because things change. In our business, things that I did, like when I'm writing a resume, okay, I don't know about other people. I'm just telling you the way I do things. I don't start from scratch. I say, okay, this person is an archaeologist. Let me go in my Google Drive and look for other people I've done resumes for who are archaeologists. And then I get some things in this. But I don't bother to look at the ones I did 10 or 20 years ago because they're not good enough. The ones that I've done in the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe at the most, that's the ones I want to see. So I order it according to date and I say, oh, here's one. And then I kind of use that as I'm building the other person's resume. So everything changes. And to keep up with the changes in any field, you have to, do continuing education. So that's another valuable thing of CDI.
Excellent. Yeah, I stay current, and it's a big challenge today. Like you're talking about these credibility elements and validity, and they still matter. I think even more today because so few people in our unregulated industry think they have to bother, which means when you have a credential and affiliation, you stand out. There is so much value to that. I think in CDI, we're if you count the former entity of CDI, we're talking 24 years, but yet we only have 72 certified advanced resume writers worldwide. But yet go on LinkedIn, there's 1,000,005 people claiming they're a professional resume writer. Job seekers got to pick. Credentials can at least make them pause and go, this person's different from the others.
If I'm having somebody work on my heart, knock on wood here, God forbid, but if I am, I'd like to know that they're certified. I'd like to know that they're trained. I'd like to know that they've done continuing medical education, because maybe something that they used to do 10 years ago is no longer considered a best practice and I could die on the operating table.
Yeah.
When I'm having someone do my taxes, I'd like to know that they're, same thing. And with resumes, it's pretty important. Where you work is where you're going to spend probably more time than even with your spouse, or at least as much time.
Right.
And so, whether or not you earn enough money can affect everything about your self-esteem, about your ability to survive economically. So having someone that knows what they're doing is pretty important.
Yeah, you hold somebody's life in their hands, and that's why I'm constantly shocked at how so many people just think they can be resume writers. But it's an ignorance thing. They think that resumes are only what they have seen, not like what you said when you get in an association and you're like, oh wow, resumes are a lot more than I thought they were. I like that analogy, the fast food.
Yeah.
Versus, because that's where I started too, for sure. 1995 resumes for a Mail Copy Plus place. Yeah. Somebody said, beware of AI. That's either Joan or Hal. And I would say, we're not using AI to write resumes, but AI is a fabulous assistant. And I think Grant may have a tip along the whole AI piece. And I've said a lot on AI we're going to hold that for a second. But yeah, beware of AI for certain uses and always double check and question your AI. All right, you've told us a little bit about this, but we've mostly talked about work. So what is, having your own business made possible for you in your life?
It's the most wonderful thing you can imagine. I've been able to go to anything I want, family reunions, go see friends, go see kids in different places, go to conferences, take off. Don't worry about holidays. I can have company in town and I'm not worried. I'll schedule around it. If you run your business the in a good way, you can really schedule around a lot of things.
Yeah.
People call, look, well, yeah, I could have that ready for you. It's going to probably be, and you get some people who like they've got to have it at a certain time, but usually 9 out of 10, 18 out of 20, there's flexible. You
Yeah.
can work it out. And so you schedule around. So that's one thing. Another thing is that I don't necessarily recommend this for everybody, and Laura's going to laugh when I tell her this, but to me, it's a sense of pride. I come from Louisiana. We're very family oriented. I've got a billion cousins, and my kids all have their friends. And you know what? I've done a lot of resumes for all of them, and they all love me. And I mean, they would probably love me anyway, but this is a little cherry on top that I help them. And, I don't charge them. And I'm not saying other people should do that. And, in everything in life, there has to be boundaries. Okay. But generally speaking, if they're a close relative or whatever, I do gratis work for them, because I charge enough by my other work that I don't need every little order from someone who might be related to me, or even my kids. Dad, my girlfriend, she's trying to do this. Could you help her? Don't worry, baby. I've got
Oh,
it. I'm going to help her. And I pride myself in that. And it's just enriched my life because they all like, your dad is so cool. He did this for me and I got this great job, So that's another part, you know.
that's awesome. I feel like an ogre now because like I don't even write my own sister's resume anymore. A Tory winner writes it. Another Tory winner who I'm like, go pay her. She'll do an awesome job. They've always given her the CDI president's family member discount, but that's so wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I think that we all define what our sense of success and what we want. Like I've always believed as an entrepreneur that even in the years where I did have to work long hours in the beginning, or when I was transitioning from my private practice to trying to build CDI, I always knew that I was doing it for full ownership of the results. And it was worth it. Like putting in 60 hours in the beginning of something, and only 60 hours because I was trying to do it faster. Like I always tell people, if you only have 20 hours, don't beat yourself up, but just don't beat yourself up because it's going to take longer to achieve it as well. But I always have just loved the fact that, what we put into it, we get out of it. And it's not, we're just padding somebody else's wallet who's going to give us a 2% cost of living increase and tell us, like you said, when we can have time off or not. So that's wonderful. All right. Janine says that she had a writing service that included resume writing called Beyond Words. And she said, I remember a time when I could use colored paper for resumes. Yeah, we remember that too. All right. If anybody wants to share what having a business has made possible for you, or that, yep, you agree with Grant's, right on with that, let us know in the chat. So, Grant, what's one thing you wished you had known when you first started your business? Or if you were starting your business today, what's one thing you would have done differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. The simple answer is pricing. I worked my tail off and I did well. I did okay. But if I'd have known then what I know now, I wouldn't have been afraid to raise prices, the way I did. I
Yes.
was stubborn, like, "Oh, I can't do it, and there's every excuse in the book that you can make. Let me give you a good example. I'm in New Orleans, right? Now, I did the research. There are 32 NFL teams in the National Football League. Okay, New Orleans has one of them. I looked at a list of the GDP, the gross domestic product, for the SMSA, Standard Metropolitan Statistical Area. Like Green Bay is not Green Bay. Okay, it's Milwaukee. Okay.
Okay.
So I looked it up, and sure enough, New Orleans was number 32 out of 32. I thought we'd be ahead of Jacksonville, but we're not. Jacksonville, for whatever reason, has more GDP than New Orleans. Okay.
Okay.
So I used to use that as an excuse to say, well, people can't really afford it. But you know what? When I drive somewhere, I see Lexuses. When I go up and down certain neighborhoods, I see beautiful homes that like I can't afford, you know. When I go out, there's fancy restaurants that probably, are out of my range, you know. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's money out there and you can make a great living. There's different business models, okay? There's like the people who do business just with, not just with, but primarily for, working class and all. That's fine. Those are like, fast food places. We talk about fast food, check cashing companies, whatever. I mean, they're, but you can make a great living off of what I call the 10%. Okay. The 10% are people who make six figures, and six figures isn't that big a deal as you think. I
Right.
mean,
Not anymore.
115. I mean, when somebody, is a client of mine nowadays, and they only make, let's say, 115,000. It's like that's unusual. Usually, they got to make quite a bit more than that. Now they can easily afford my services. Okay, but you'd be surprised. Smart people who don't have as much money use my service. They go like, and I'm even like, wait a minute, are you sure you can afford this? Oh yeah, I want the best. They are
Mhm.
smart. They're
Yep.
going to be like, my resumes do great with executives and professionals, right?
Yep.
But if you're a mid-level or even I get working class, blue collar people, you use my resumes, you're going to stand out. You're going to go to the tippy top of every pile. So
Yep.
they are smart people. And think about it. I mean, like people who don't have a lot of money, they find a way to go to school. And that's another thing, people are willing to spend money on education. And education is great. And we all cherish it. And I've got a lot of education. Okay. But education doesn't promise you everything. There's been a million articles about how a college degree, you got to look at the ROI depending on if you go to a state school or an Ivy League school and all these things. But education, people like, oh yeah, well, yeah, this semester I had to pay 4,000 for this. Hey, spend a grand or two on a good resume and maybe LinkedIn or whatever, because your education is necessarily it's going to help you, but you need to, it's like a great product. You got to package it. It
Yep.
will sit on the shelf unless it's packaged properly. And it
Absolutely.
also gives the individual, as we all know, when I do these resumes for people, it changes their whole outlook. They
Yeah.
go, oh my God, now I'm more confident. Like I didn't realize how many times, Laura, have you heard, and I've heard the same thing. Gosh, I'd even hire me now. Or
Yes.
I didn't realize how good I was.
Yep.
All those things are very, very important. And that's part of what we do for people. Even if we don't formally have a coaching relationship with them, the fact that we made them look so good increases their confidence.
Oh yes, you said it perfectly when you said that people that just takes them to the top of the stack, because all you have to do is go to one job fair to see that your clients are probably the only ones in that market with a great resume. And so now multiply that by applying online for jobs. I mean, I only write my husband's resume now, and oh, he wants a job at the number 3 DoD contractor in the country. Sure, baby, we're going to write one resume, and you're going to get an interview, and you're going to negotiate a 25% price, pay increase, because that's how it works. He's blue collar, I mean, it's a total no brainer because nobody's resume looks that way. And people invest in that when you educate them appropriately. And I love what you said about new graduates, because I used to say to them, and this is something I always say, hey, use whatever I tell you, because you're the ones working with job seekers now. But I always went from the point of view of, you just spent 4 to 8 years of your life and up to $40,000 a year to get this education, so that you can go forward and have, hopefully a great career and pay off those student loans and live a great life. I'm asking for $1,200 to help you package and position that. And that's just no brainer. I mean, I closed them all because it was like, put in that perspective. It's like, well, yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. And
And there are so many other services too that will present themselves that you can do for people. I had a guy a while back worked for a gigantic corporation that has the initials GE. You've probably heard of it. Okay. And this guy made a couple 100,000 a year and everything else. And he was an IT, full stack developer, and he'd fly around to Seattle and all over the country meeting with, aviation clients or whatever and doing their software. Well, for whatever reason, they let him go, and it was kind of unfair. And they apologized to him because it was a team thing, and there was, it's too much to go into. But at any rate, I asked him. I said, "Well, what kind of severance did you get?" And he told me, and I said, "That's not acceptable. You should have gotten way more than that." I said, "Why don't you pay me? I'll write a letter on your behalf." And if you get lawyers involved, they get all polarized. But if it's just a letter that's coming from him, and when I do those kind of letters, they're bulleted, they take into account, they're respectful, et cetera, et cetera. They're not confrontational, et cetera. I wrote this for him, and they doubled what they gave him. So in other words, by paying me $400 or $500 to write a letter, okay, he got another $20,000. I think that was a pretty good ROI.
that was a really good ROI. Exactly. I love it. I love it.
Telling me, he said, "Grant, this is the Sistine Chapel of severance letters." So I've always remembered that. Like, okay.
That's great. That's great. Janine says about the last question where we were talking about benefits of being self-employed. She says, agree with both of you. Having my own business brings so much freedom. Yeah, I love that. The Sistine Chapel. That is great, Grant. No, but it's so true. I can remember a job seeker, I included one custom follow-up letter, and I knew he'd had an interview and he didn't get with me about it. He was an engineer, and I went back to him and I was like, what happened? He's like, oh, I blew it. And I'm like, but were you qualified? And he's like, I was. And I'm like, all right, we're going to write this letter. And he ended up ultimately getting the job. And he came back to me and told me afterwards that on his first day, his boss goes, after your interview, we assumed you must have lied to get your foot in the door on your resume. You weren't even under consideration. And then you sent that letter where you talked about projects, included letters of recommendation that he was supposed to bring with him. But people get nervous, they panic, but saved the day, landed the job, just because of the letter. So yeah.
And how much did he have to pay for that letter?
Oh, back then it was in his package, so I probably had like a $75 value.
Yeah, and he did quite a good ROI for that.
Exactly. Right. So we're the time is ticking away here, but I have a couple more questions. For somebody who's considering a career in this field or maybe is struggling in their business right now, any other pieces of advice you might give them?
Definitely. To me, one of the most important things, and not everybody wants to do this or can do this, and I understand, but I call it availability. They say availability is the greatest ability of all. And I think it was Woody Allen who was quoted as saying 80% of winning is showing up or something. So just answering your phone. So many places, I get a lot of orders because they called other places and they didn't answer their phone and I answered my phone. Okay. Or they email you. Be expeditious about this. Answer their email and tell them, do more than just say one or two things, just not overwhelm them, but, be responsive,
Yeah.
So availability is really important. Okay. And then there's little kind of details, one example is this. Let's say you're doing resumes and you're making a certain amount of money and you're like, I'm not making enough money and I'm not getting enough business. There's so much business out there. You just have to tap it. One example is Laura mentioned earlier about there's some kind of upcoming program on LinkedIn company pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just give you an example. And, if I needed to make a lot more money right now, you know how I could do it? I would just go into companies in my little region here because I wouldn't have to be my region, but I have more credibility. Like, oh, he's from New Orleans. Oh, he knows. And I would go for a list and I would look and I'd find, like, when you put your profile on LinkedIn, if the company has a LinkedIn page, then they have a little icon next to their your company description of your job. But if they don't have a LinkedIn page, LinkedIn puts this little grayed out couple of squares and it's kind of ugly looking and it doesn't look attractive. So just go to LinkedIn, look at all these profiles and just find all these companies that have the grayed out part. And then find a way to contact them through email or through phone or however you want to reach out to them and say, look, I've got a little thing here. I noticed that you don't have a LinkedIn company page. It's very valuable because your competition has it. You don't have it, so you're not going to look as good as them. Okay. And for only XXXXX dollars, I'll create your company page for you. If you'd like a contract, I could do a weekly or a bi-weekly or whatever post on there for you. Find interesting thing in your sector or field and put it in there. Or if you want, we can just go with creating the page itself. That's all. Whatever you like. Here's a choice of different things. Which one would you like? You could make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month just by doing that. And let me tell you, creating LinkedIn company pages isn't that hard.
No.
Okay. And you can make many hundreds of dollars per hour doing that if you price it right. I mean, what I think everybody who's really good should make minimum of 200 and maybe $200 to $400 an hour. I think that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
That's what attorneys make. Some attorneys make more, a few make less. But when I'm pricing something, I figure if I don't make $200 an hour, I'm losing money.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm making 300, 400, I'm making a lot. By the way, the most profitable thing that I do is updates because clients call me, Grant, you did my resume in 2016 and I've had 2 jobs or whatever. How much would that be? And so I say, well, send me what it is and I'll give you a quote. So I give them a quote and, my average, and, look, I may be under what Laura or someone else would charge, but my average is about $450, $500 for an update. Okay.
Well, that's good.
And it takes me about an hour. Sometimes I can do it in 30, 40 minutes. Sometimes it might take 90 minutes, but the average is an hour. So that's one of my most profitable pieces of business. And right now, because I've been in business so long, I'd say it's about 25 to 30% of my business is updates.
Nice. And it should be. That's awesome.
And it's fun. It's easy. It's like,
Yes. Those are
a little bit of styling, put in the thing, little bit of things, boom, 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 done. Looks good. Wow. Okay. You just made $450. And then you get them to say, oh, by the way, how about the LinkedIn? That's only X amount of dollars. And LinkedIn is another thing. LinkedIn takes a little while, so you bet to do it right.
Yeah.
So you need to price it appropriately because otherwise you get into the $100-something an hour range, which is not where you want to be. You want to be in the $200 to $300 to $400 an hour range, if at all possible.
Yes, absolutely. Such good advice that people can absorb. Janine says, thanks for sharing, Grant. Great suggestions to think about to help grow a business. So, Grant, any last words of encouragement or anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I just say that, all my friends say this about me. Grant is the most optimistic person I know. and it's true. And it's not because I'm not aware of all the negative things in life and the tragedies and, and there are bad people out there. I mean, nothing's perfect. And by the way, I always say this: if you wake up every morning expecting that the day is going to go perfectly, you're not going to have a problem with your, insurance company or your cable company or your contractor or anything or your clients or whatever. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm just an optimistic person, and I really believe that optimism is what will make your life better. Just there's a saying that I picked up a few years ago. It's my favorite saying. I always take the high road because it's much less crowded.
Oh yeah, I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that, but that is, I
And I just love that saying. And I refuse negativity. And you'll hear some people on chat boards, okay, occasionally talking about PETAs. And there are what it means in a translation, pain in the a whatever. You
yeah,
can understand it, right? And there are clients who can be that way. And, we all have had some. But I use a thing called, I almost call it feng shui. Okay. Somebody, they say, oh, this part of my resume, I'm wrong. I said, I'm so happy you told me about that, because we need to change that, because I agree with you. And look, sometimes, I mean, there are some limits I will not go beyond. And I want you to put on there, that you know, something ridiculous, right? But in general, it's their resume. I'm not gonna, they're not gonna die because it's not exactly the way I wanted it. If they want it that way, fine. So I'm always positive.
yeah,
Every now and then I will also say, look, I'm telling you as a professional, I recommend this. But if you want it that way, I also am in business and I will do it the way you want. But in general, and every resume that I send to a client, I use suggestibility, which is not manipulative. It's just common psychological sense. When they get their resume, it says there, your resume came out great! Exclamation point. And then I go in through all the things. And I say, however, you know, you know, your background better than I possibly could. Please feel free to tell me anything you'd like to adjust or tweak or change, etc. And you know what? You know how many people I get back? Like almost everybody. Hey, Grant, I agree. My resume came out great.
yeah. Oh,
Be positive. Positivity will get you further than anything else in life.
absolutely. I love that. That's a great close to our interview, because I agree. The um, glass is half full, the glass is half empty. It wasn't about the glass at all, however you want to look at it. But I think I was telling somebody earlier today, and people have heard me say it in different events, that because I feel like so much negativity hits me all the time in the world, just, all the things we deal with, red tape everywhere and on hold and this problem and that angry person, that every time a negative thought hits my brain, I go, something amazing is going to happen to me today. I may have to say that a dozen times a day. And somebody said to me earlier, they're like, does it work? And I was like, yeah, it does, because I start looking for the positive things and I'm asking the universe for positive things. So
When
amazing.
I'm in my car, I always ask the parking goddess to find me a place, and she always does. It always works. I just no parking spaces. Say, okay, parking goddess,
Yeah,
help me. She helps me.
that's awesome. All right, we have a Facebook user saying, thanks, Laura and Grant. Your talk will be increasing my ROI, and I've been at this since 94 too.
Wow.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, everybody, please give a shout out to Grant in the chat. That was our last question. And be sure to watch for the replay if you are on CDI's list, or if you're an association member. You will get an email tomorrow morning pointing to the replay page. We have tips from Grant there that he didn't talk about in the interview today. So it's really valuable to check that page out. And I will also be linking to resources that support CDI resources that support some of the tips if you want to take a deeper dive into things that Grant talked about today. Grant, thank you so much. I'm going to tell him now about our next guest, but I've been delighted by this and I could go forever talking to you. I think you're just a well of valuable information. And I know when he has presented, he's done sessions for CDI and business plans in the past, and always great. So listen, if you found this as valuable as I did, check it out next week, 3:45 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. My next guest is Sandra Allison of SA Resume Services, LLC. Sandra's been in business over 7 years, and 50% of her business is executive level C-suite founders, and 50% is board candidates. She also works with international clients in 22 countries so far, and her specialties are tech, finance, and pharma. Her services are pretty much what you've come to hear, but she also, resume writing, LinkedIn profiles, job search, interview prep. She also does board and informational biographies and job application essays, editing, and review. But what I like is that she says she's redefining the vision of grandma in business through the knowledge, enthusiasm, and energy that she brings to her practice. She will share her age with you, and you'll be able to see her picture on the replay page of Graham's event. But yeah, I love that because you can be successful as an entrepreneur at any age. Nobody puts you out to pasture, if you will. So this is Sandra's third business, and she says her marketing savvy and business know-how have allowed her to take advantage of low and no-cost ways to promote her business and be seen as the best in her field. So I think you're going to get a lot of different but valuable advice by coming and joining Sandra and I next week. And so don't forget, like, subscribe, follow, so you don't miss out on the reminders that we send out. And now I'm going to cover Grant's face for a moment. Bear with me, Grant. It was covering my face, and I'm like, nope, it's so weird when I'm talking and it's covering my face. But I want to encourage you, if you're not a CDI member, head over to careerdirectors.com. You can either do /free stuff in the URL or just click on the free stuff button. We have the opportunity to join our community, which has daily prompts for participation, accountability, and support. There's a wealth of deep dive lessons, the type of lessons that our members receive. There's even a testimonial from a now member who claims he built a 6-figure practice on the free lessons alone. And then, of course, why not become a member? There's a lot there, though. So take the quiz, a 1-minute quiz to identify your top blocker to a 6-figure income. And it will curate all of those resources for you and tell you which ones you should focus on to have the greatest success faster. One more important thing, we're actually going to be opening up membership because our membership is closed. I like to focus on serving a certain amount of community so that I can get to know the members and they can help each other. And so we only open up membership occasionally. Well, we're doing a mini opening on Monday, April 1st. We're going to do 48 hours, but it's only to the wait list. So you're going to want to head over to Career Directors, go to the join page, and make sure you're on that wait list so you get the opportunity to come join this amazing community that you heard Grant talking about today. So that's it. That's all we've got. Again, Grant, thank you so much. This has really been fabulous. It's like old home day to spend all this time with you. And really so grateful that you shared all these stories I didn't know and such really great advice that, as someone said, is going to help them just really raise their ROI and their success. So on behalf of CDI and all the resume writers and career coaches you've helped, we thank you. And everybody, I hope I will see you next week. And until then, let's keep making 2024 the best year yet and fly higher.